Move. We're going to have to move. That cloud is coming this way.
Yeah. Ashley, get out of there. Leave the camera unmanned if you need to, and get out of there. What we've been fearing all afternoon has apparently happened. We were watching number 7 World Trade, which was part of the ancillary damage of the explosion and collapse of the other two. And that was all day about a few moments ago in Lower Manhattan. The building has since come down. We're still joined by military and security analyst Dan Garay. Dan, you know, as we continue, as I said, the story keeps playing out, and in a way, it's the terrorist damage keeps going on these hours after the initial attack. What does this do? You were talking about the American psyche earlier.
Well, you know, we know a lot from at least past experience, not only American, but worldwide and in history, that people do react with shock and even panic at the beginning of these kind of attacks. The bombing of Britain, or even the Allied bombing of Germany, and then they essentially not get used to it, but learn to cope, and if anything, become more defiant. This kind of terror action globally, historically, produces the exact opposite reaction that its perpetrators want. It produces anger, defiance, determination to win.
Pictures don't give you the sound and the smell and the feel of it, do they?
No, I mean, that was one thing that was so just terrifying from the distance we were at, just the smell and the sound and the enormity of the flames, and you couldn't see the skyline. The skyline was barely visible through the smoke. Mm-hmm. It really, I mean, looked like a war zone.
Well, you know, too, you think of the layout of Manhattan. It's such a compact city compared to Los Angeles. We're so spread out here. You know, if you're in Riverside, you're quite a ways away from something that might happen in the city of Los Angeles. But you being in Manhattan, you're blocks away. You could walk to that location in a matter of minutes.
Exactly. It's very compact, and most of the people now are just getting around on foot and being encouraged to stay as far north of Manhattan or out of Manhattan as possible. But I really must cut you short. We have another editorial meeting. So.
Sure. I understand you work in the news business and you have a job to do today. Nicole Still, thank you so much, calling live from Manhattan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole Still. Speaking of the news business, the LA Times is just out with a special early edition with a big headline about this morning's terror attack at the World Trade Center. You can see it here. Hijacked jets fly into the Trade Center and the Pentagon. It has the pictures that we've all been seeing all day long of one of the aircraft, presumably the second aircraft going into the building, and of course the early news on what we've been reporting to you all day long.
John, right now we're also getting the first confirmed word of some victims, people who are on board those planes. We had 4 planes go.
Wilson. She called her husband twice during the hijacking to tell him the plane had been hijacked. And they lost contact once, and she called back. After the first call, Olson called the command center at the Justice Department to inform them of this hijacking, and they said they knew nothing about it but would track it down. Barbara Olson told Ted the following story, that all the passengers were herded to the back of the plane, including the flight personnel, including the pilot. And the only weapons she mentioned were knives and cardboard cutters. You would think if there were a machine gun or any other kind of gun that she would have mentioned that. But the only weapons she mentioned were knives and cardboard cutters. I asked Ted if she made any reference to nationality of the hijackers or any suspicions about the motive, and he said she made no reference to that at all. They didn't have a whole lot of time to talk. She said to Ted, "What do I tell the pilot to do?" Somewhat typical of Barbara, a take charge kind of person. But there was nothing they could do, and they're all trapped in the back of the plane.
Well, that answers a few questions that we've had, and that is, how did they overpower it? How many people overpowered it? And what did they use? We know they used not handguns, but knives or cardboard cutters, as we reported. And we also know the pilot was not in the cockpit at the time. I don't think there's a pilot in this country that could be forced to do what happened today with a gun at his head. And apparently the terrorists piloted the aircraft themselves, as we've heard aviation experts say today. these aircraft, these two particular types of aircraft, 767, 757, are not particularly hard to fly if you have a basic knowledge of how to fly an airplane.
That brings though into question, how does somebody get knives on board a plane with
May have
metal
been knives that
detectors?
were already on, may have been the cutlery already on the aircraft.
Okay, a lot of questions there still to be answered. A very tragic piece of sound there as you hear from somebody who actually heard from, spoke with, talked to a relative of a victim on that plane who has managed to get a hold of a cell phone and make a phone call as that plane was being hijacked and going down. That is just one example of the tragedy we're looking at here today with over 200 people on board those planes. That you can guess was probably not the first of the cell phone calls we're going to hear about.
Let's review how this happened. That is the time.
It is a smoking ruin in its upper floors. These World Trade Center towers have absorbed a tremendous shock of fast-flying airliners, highly inflammable aviation fuel. The one building has collapsed. And once it starts to go, how quickly it went. These home videos, taken from across the way, from a place that once had a spectacular view of a spectacular New York skyline. And the smoke told the story. Scott Pelley will bring us up to date on the situation in Lower Manhattan. Scott, it's an unsettling moment to see, again, different views of those buildings collapsing and indeed the aircraft hitting the second building. But what's the situation down there right now?
Dan, the smoke that you see rising behind me now is from World Trade Center building number 7, which collapsed about 15 minutes ago. This is a very large
videotape is the collapse at World Trade Center building number 7, which housed Solomon Brothers and Smith Barney. I look away because our friend here who's an eyewitness and who worked in the building. And by the way, let's get a picture. Another, he wouldn't call himself a hero. Here's a man in our studio who's given us some eyewitness reports here today who calmly got together, led people out of the building. It was his responsibility. He took it upon himself to get people out and then get himself out. Was there actual panic as you did then?
There was panic among the staff, yes. But the important thing, everybody got out on time before.
Well, you won't say it, but I will. You got everybody out.
Yeah.
David Martin is outside the Pentagon. David.
Dan, the U.S. is trying to do two very different things here simultaneously.
Has just gone down, and I just wanted to let you know very quickly, before that, number 6 World Trade Center went down, and housed in those two buildings, offices of OSHA, U.S. Customs, ATF, and a number of other retail spaces as well. Not only that, but financial offices too. Those buildings had all been cleared out after the first plane hit the World Trade Center this morning. So there was some speculation that there's not a soul in those buildings at the time. Certainly, number 7 that just went down as we were live on the air earlier on with MSNBC was cleared out. Most people, they said earlier that they were just waiting for that building to go down. So they were expecting this to happen. Not only that, it is still an awesome sight when this happens. I just wanted to introduce you very quickly to Mel and his son Max, who have basically evacuated their own house. You live just down this way, just past this red building, is that right?
Yeah, Duane Street, just by Chambers Street.
You just picked up your animals and one overnight bag and gotten out of there. Were you told by anybody that you needed to get out of there quickly?
No, actually, we had a hard time getting back there because the whole area's been cut off. But we'd already left, but we didn't have any of our stuff. So now we're trying to get back because the water, the electricity's all been cut off. And, we basically have to move out of the area.
Where are you going to spend the night?
Friend's house. We have, our children, our other children in Brooklyn. We can't even figure out how to get there. So.
Max, you were in school, you were in high school, not far away. You could see the actual plane crash and the fireball that ensued after that.
Well, I was in class and my friend said, oh my God, someone bombed the World Trade Center. And we all said, that's not funny. and we looked out the window and there was an explosion. Then we turned on the news and we saw on the TV the smoke and the coverage. We saw another plane going. I said, well, is this a replay of some sort? We looked out the window and we saw the explosion carry through the other side of the building.
And they just kept you in the school at that point?
They kept us in the school, and I think it was a smart idea because if they kept us in the school, like that way kids wouldn't run down there and see what was happening. And then later they evacuated the school.
Thanks very much and good luck to you. I hope you are all safe. Matt, I just wanted to tell you really quickly what happened earlier. We have been moved about 5 different times. My producer and I, early this morning, right after the first...
It will not necessarily be in order, but this to review for you and give you the latest picture information we have is the way it was this morning between 9 and 11 a.m. New York time, Eastern time. One plane has hit the upper tier, but watch the left-hand corner of your screen. The second World Trade Tower has not yet been hit. It's about 9 a.m. Here comes the plane, very high speed, cuts almost through the building. Great balls of fire, tremendous bellows of smoke. The voices you hear in the background, the people who were in the home or the place where these pictures were taken. So the second building was hit. Now, you note the plane went in at about, that aircraft hit that tower at floor about 71. The first building was hit, 90 or above, say. So both buildings are now smoke and flame. Now, different view. Both buildings are aflame. And then the building that was hit second comes tumbling down. That was the one where the airplane came in particularly quickly and hit the building at about floor 71. The Chrysler building in the background. Now the second tower, which was actually hit first by American Flight 11, begins to crumble. And disappear. And since the most recent collapse, which happened just a short while ago, Building 7, a 47-story building as part of the World Trade Center complex, collapsed. That building had been, we were told, completely evacuated. But the fate of people on the ground, including rescue workers, as it came tumbling down, we simply don't know. But it had been threatening to collapse, had been on the verge of collapse for a long while, so perhaps most of the area had been evacuated, but who could have anticipated this kind of incredibly dense and fast-moving smoke, which covers many blocks in New York. And like white monster, came quickly down side streets and major thoroughfares. Now stay with me here, stay with us here. CBS, this is another, see the plane? This is another view, more videotape. This plane.
Against a backdrop of gentle blue sky, a terrorist arrow pierces the heart of a city and a nation.
Oh. Those two sequences we should see again.
One more horrifying than the next.
And we will show you.
This was a United Airlines flight 175.
Some of this video has just now become available. And in the aftermath, well, if you've been with us, you know what happens. We're going to try to re-rack. That's the opposite side of the second tower hit. We had different views during the day, but this was photographed from that side of the building. Now we're going to re-cue that sequence of videotape. This includes new videotape material obtained by CBS News over the last hour and a half. We have shown some of it. Now, this is the latest new video we have. You see the plane coming in high speed, aiming for the mid-level, and hits it.
The heart of a city and a nation.
That was the second flight, United Flight 175, and this is the reverse side of the building. See, the plane actually pierced the building
There were several
and
angles
virtually came out the other side. Yet another view, the plane hitting.
It's almost like the building swallowed the plane.
Yeah.
Yes. And here you see this aircraft below. Did you see that? You had to be looking closely on the right-hand side to see it hitting there. And indeed, Russ Mitchell said it's almost as if the building swallowed the plane and then belched back up. Well, I've never seen photographs like that because nothing like this has ever happened before.
There, coming across the scene. Nick Robertson, can you hear us?
We're being told, Joey, I can hear you if you can hear me. Certainly, big detonation there, missiles flying across the city. We're being told from sources in Kandahar, that's the spiritual capital of Afghanistan, 300 miles south of here, that there is no rocket activity like this south of here in Kandahar. Certainly in Kabul, very, very active at this stage. Multiple detonations. It is nighttime here. It is dark. It is difficult to get an accurate fix on exactly what we're seeing and exactly what we're hearing. Certainly the sound, what appears to be the sound of large missiles incoming and landing in the city. Certainly a big fire on the horizon of the city at the moment. And certainly anti-aircraft fire coming up from the city and rockets being launched and flying across the horizon of the city. Rockets perhaps going at the speed of several hundred miles an hour, the sort of speed that one might expect to see cruise missiles traveling across the horizon at, burning with a white glow coming from their tails rather than a yellow glow. The fire on the horizon that we can see from here burning furiously now. Perhaps it would be accurate at this stage to suspect that that was a fuel dump that's been hit by the way that it's burning, flames leaping, and that fuel dump must be perhaps 5 to 8 miles from where I am. Flames leaping up from that fuel dump now leaping up right into the air. It was a low burning fire before, but it's now really increased in its ferocity, perhaps indicating that it is a fuel dump. Looking across the rest of the city, that fuel dump, perhaps the only big fire we can see at this time. From our vantage point here at the Kabul Intercontinental Hotel that overlooks the whole of the city of Kabul, that is in a basin surrounded by mountains, the whole city is laid out in front of us. The gunfire that was coming up from the city seems to have subsided for now. We're not hearing any more detonations at this moment. And as I say, the fire on the horizon really burning furiously at this time, flames leaping way up in the air this moment. Joey?
Nick, if you can talk to us a little bit about your circumstance. It is 6 o'clock in the evening here in Atlanta. It must be quite late at night there in Kabul.
Indeed, 2:30 in the morning here, Joey. We're 8.5 hours ahead of East Coast time in the United States. And it was about 5 hours ago that the foreign minister of Afghanistan, Wakil Ahmed Mutawakil, briefed journalists. I hear more detonations going off now. He said that the Taliban had not taken precautions against the possibility of there being an air attack against Afghanistan. He said because it was not necessary. The Taliban spiritual leader, Mullah Omar, had also made a statement saying that they felt Osama bin Laden wasn't responsible for what had happened in the United States. He said his country was a peaceful country. He wanted it peace, and he wanted peace in other countries around the world. Certainly what we're seeing in Kabul these early hours of this Wednesday morning is very far from peace. Certainly multiple explosions happening in and around the city. There is a front line about 50 miles north of the city where the Taliban are fighting a battle against the Northern Alliance here. We could hear detonations coming from that northern area as well. But on the perimeter of the city, particularly in the direction of the Kabul airport, which is about 5 to 8 miles from where we are, detonations coming from there. I remember standing on this balcony about 4 years ago watching fighter jets bomb that airport as part of Afghanistan's ongoing civil war. The flash at the airport to us hearing the detonation at the hotel is about the same duration, so I am using that as an estimate to gauge that those missiles again are falling in the area of the airport. First, we're seeing the flash, and then we hear the detonation some several seconds afterwards, and they appear to be coming from that airport area, in some cases several miles away from us. There is still a lot of flashing we can see in the air reflected off clouds. That could be thunder and lightning. However, there's a possibility that those reflections are missiles landing elsewhere, the flashes as they explode and reflecting off the clouds. But it's not a good indication. We certainly don't hear any death.
Back and forth in this war that's been going on in Afghanistan, is this at all typical?
No, one would definitely have to say it's not typical. The strikes on Kabul have been very infrequent over the last few years, very occasional. The Northern Alliance very aware that it's been blamed in the past of many civilian casualties by launching attacks on Kabul. So there have been very few direct attacks on the city. And indeed, the forces of the Northern Alliance are at such a distance back from the city, only long-range, well, medium-range missiles capable of going 30, 40, 50 miles are able to reach the city from their positions. And it's certainly not something that's happened in this city, a barrage of this type, a sustained artillery attack or missile attack of this type in recent years even.
All right, Nick Robertson, we want you to stay connected to us. Let's keep this connection alive. But as we're watching these pictures, let's now go back to New York and to Aaron Brown. Aaron.
Judy, thank you. I'm joined here as well by Paula Zahn, and you will hear her voice in just a moment. As we continue to look at these pictures out of Afghanistan, again, I would remind you that the technology here is it's called a video phone. It is very high-tech and a little bit imperfect, but it is perfect enough so that you can clearly see that fire burning in the distance. What Nick Robertson has described as an ammunition dump, very probably, and you can very clearly see, or we've been very able to see throughout Nick's reporting, the tracer fire coming up, the anti-aircraft fire coming up.
I think we need to make
at a store with a glass front, and we couldn't get in. There was no way to go. We couldn't breathe. We didn't have masks. So a police officer from New York, came in with an axe and literally just bashed in the window and let us into that store. If it wasn't for that, I'm not sure what we would have done, and that's been a huge problem all day. Couldn't just see anything, and that was the problem.
What was the heat like, and how suffocating was it for those trying to escape?
It was hot, but luckily we were a couple of blocks away, and the bigger problem was all the dust, and it got into your lungs, and you just kept coughing, and you couldn't speak, and you couldn't see. That, I mean, people were walking at the polls, people were crying and screaming. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare.
Well, again, these are just a couple of people who have been on the scene all day, Peter. And as we said, we have watched this footage. We have seen people both
poles on the way in, and it slammed into the building. You can see on the one side of the huge gash that 25 windows down along the Pentagon were destroyed. The section of the building that was hit by the fuselage of the aircraft collapsed several minutes after the aircraft hit it. I was able to get an exclusive walk up to the damaged site with some officials who got me through police lines. The area is surrounded with...
You okay, sir? Okay. Can I just get a toot off your respirator? Yeah. Can I get a toot? I'm just getting a couple of clean breaths.
That's good.
Okay. Back to you.
The Pentagon briefing is now underway. Here's the Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld.
It's an indication that the United States government is functioning in the face of this terrible act against our country. I should add that the briefing here is taking place in the Pentagon. The Pentagon's functioning. It'll be in business tomorrow. I know the interest in casualty figures, and all I can say is it's not possible to have solid casualty figures at this time. And the various components are doing roster checks, and we'll have information at some point in the future, and as quickly as it's possible to have it, it will certainly be made available to each of you. I'll be happy to take a few questions after asking First General Shelton if he would like to say anything, and then we will allow the others to make a remark or two.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Secretary just said, today we have watched the tragedy of an outrageous act of barbaric terrorism carried out by fanatics against both civilians and military people, acts that have killed and maimed many innocent and decent citizens of our country. I extend my condolences to the entire Department of Defense families, military and civilian, and to the families of all those throughout our nation who lost loved ones. I think this is indeed a reminder of the tragedy and the tragic dangers that we face day in and day out, both here at home as well as abroad. I would tell you up front, I have no intentions of discussing today what comes next, but make no mistake about it, your armed forces are ready.
Chairman. Chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Carl Levin.
Our intense focus on recovery and helping the injured and the families of those who were killed is matched only by our determination to prevent more attacks and matched only by our unity to track down, root out, and relentlessly pursue terrorists, states that support them.
Is that the hijacking 4 airplanes is a very complicated operation. Even hijacking 1 is complicated. And they will have left some trail behind them. They will have had to have checked in, and they will have had to have purchased tickets either under their name or alias names.
If the U.S. cracks the case, how will it retaliate? Current and former officials say massively, but carefully.
If we're going to act, we need to be able to convince the world that we were justified in our actions. We had that evidence during the African embassy bombings, and I think it's critical that the intelligence community now begin to develop that with respect to these attacks.
Today, Afghanistan's Taliban leaders deny any involvement by Osama bin Laden. But as David Bloom alluded to earlier, intelligence officials and others are telling NBC tonight that they are 90% sure that bin Laden is involved. And Tom, if that proves to be the case, there is no doubt in anyone's mind that the U.S. will retaliate.
But the question is, how do they find Osama bin Laden, and who do they retaliate against?
They cannot find Osama bin Laden. They have not been able to. He is #1 on the most wanted list of the FBI. They have warned the Taliban that they will respond against Afghanistan's leaders. So the attack would be against Afghanistan. Within the last 3 weeks, they have warned Afghanistan that they will hold the Taliban personally responsible if Osama bin Laden attacks the United States.
Andrea, already there is talk about a massive intelligence failure. It's not so much the blame game as much as it is that this could happen again. There have been a number of red flags that have gone up for years now, but even in Washington at the highest political levels, people have refused to take them as seriously as this day indicates they should have.
Exactly right. I mean, in our report, Senator Warren Rudman, former senator, you spoke to him earlier today. He and Gary Hart, another former senator, had a blue panel commission, a blue ribbon commission. They warned that the nation's defense, the national defense here at home, not overseas, is the greatest vulnerability. That was in February and March. Not much has been done. The bureaucracy moved so slowly, and after the 1998 bombings, Tom, America's embassies were not greatly enhanced in their security, partially, but Congress rejected demands by 2 secretaries of state to beef up security to a much greater level overseas.
Security team felt comfortable letting him chopper back to the White House was because there is substantial air cover in the area keeping him protected. But it has been a long day for him, as you noted, and he has, we're told from people who were with him, wanted to get back to the White House all day, but again was listening very closely to his security team, who wanted to be absolutely certain that that was going to be all right. We were talking earlier, the president is very eager to make plain tonight that his mood is retaliatory, to express impatience. We got a little bit of a hint of that from a statement from Ari Fleischer, his press secretary today, who said not so long ago, we will find these people and they will suffer the consequences of taking on this nation. I wouldn't be surprised to hear something like that from the president tonight. Equally eager to get back, Peter, just as the president is back, congressional leaders, they're planning to make a public statement tonight at 7:30 p.m. Again, everybody wanting to show this is business as usual in Washington, certainly not usual in the way we would ever define it, but they want to show a government that is up and functioning because they think that the PR element here, in terms of sending a message around the world, is every bit as important as security measures.
As we wait, I'm going to bring in the voice of Charlie Gibson at the moment because I do not want to go away from this scene on what I assume is the south lawn of the White House. We'll just stay with this and watch the president come out. But Charlie, you've been trying to get some kind of handle on casualties throughout the day. Have had any success?
Well, no, Peter. People want a number. And as if it were some way to quantify these most horrific of acts. And properly, no one has been willing to speculate on what that number may be. Obviously, any low number would have to be ratcheted up at some point, and to give upper-end estimates are probably too horrible to imagine. As the mayor of New York, Rudolph Giuliani, said, when we get the final number, it will be more than we can bear. The concern, obviously, is that there were emergency workers inside the World Trade Centers when they collapsed, when the Twin Towers came down, and the evacuations had not been completed. And as the Secretary of Defense said a moment ago, when we get the totals from the Pentagon, it will be a lot more than a few. We do have some estimates on injured, but again, these are highly unreliable. The mayor, again, saying at least 2,100 injured in New York, 1,500 taken to Liberty State Park across the Hudson River in New Jersey, 600 taken to hospitals, and the most chilling, one of the most chilling quotes that we've heard today, St. Vincent's Hospital here in New York had more than 200 injured. One doctor, Stephen Stern, saying there are hundreds of people burned head to toe. And we know many burn victims have been evacuated, some as far away as being taken to Canada, some being flown to Vanderbilt Hospital in Nashville. The military apparently flying those burn victims out.
Thanks, Tony. There he is, the president coming back from a trip that has taken him first to Florida today to talk about education, when ironically the political establishment in Washington wanted to talk about federal budget and keeping the country out of recession. And then this happened just as the president was visiting a group of people. He learned about it, spoke to the people, then moved on to Louisiana and then out to Nebraska, where he went into a bunker totally reminiscent of the situation which the president might have found himself in, and which the country prepared for during the Cold War, when the issue was nuclear exchange between the United States and the Soviet Union. And now, after something of a sharp debate, we gather, between the president's political staff and between the Secret Service, the president is coming home to the White House. There's nothing that this president, this new and young president, could ever have imagined was going to occur on his watch, which would test his leadership qualities so. And he is going, and how he
out of the Trade Center, covered in debris. Ghostly figures coughing and vomiting from the smoke and dust.
It was the most horrific scene I've ever seen in my whole life. We saw the World Trade Center in flames, a big gaping hole all the way on the top of it. We could see people jumping from the top of the building.
At midday, the financial district of Lower Manhattan looks like a war zone. With no idea if another attack is imminent, hundreds of companies throughout New York send their workers home. Bridges and tunnels across the Hudson River are closed. Mass transit shut down.
There are over 1,000 rescue workers, probably about 2,000 that are deployed, trying to get into the buildings, trying to find people, trying to search for people. The governor and I spoke a couple of hours ago, and the governor has deployed the National Guard to relieve them because our people are going to need reinforcements pretty soon. But right now they don't want to leave because they're searching for innocent citizens, and they're searching for some of their brothers and sisters.
When rescuers finally got inside the trade towers, the damage left many of them shocked at the near total devastation. There's no way to estimate casualties. Thousands are believed dead. For those used to saving lives, the frustration is overwhelming.
When you start talking to a New York police officer and they start crying for what they've seen in the last couple hours, you know the seriousness and the gravity of the situation.
Throughout the day, rescuers have faced a terrible choice with hundreds, perhaps thousands of people trapped in the rubble in there. When is it safe to go back in? And Tom, the most vivid example of that, referred to by David Bloom a little while ago, that, of course, the loss of Building 7 of the World Trade Center just over my shoulder, which tumbled to the ground 8 hours after this attack began. Tom?
NBC's Pat Dawson in Lower Manhattan tonight, and of course, for many of the people who lived through all of that, it will be one of the unforgettable moments of their lives. NBC's Ann Thompson was in the vicinity of the World Trade Center when the buildings began to come down. Ann?
Tom, this is the view tonight down West Broadway. Smoke's filling the air where the two towers in building number 7 stood. In the last hour, we have seen busloads of police, of doctors, and ambulance after ambulance go into that area to try to repair a city that's been mortally wounded by this attack. A direct hit that shattered New York City's confidence.
Well, as soon as the first building collapsed, everybody made a mad dash to just take cover.
And everybody just started running. I just happened to duck right into the post office.
As soon as we got out of the train station, people were screaming and crying and yelling, and it was just total chaos, and the bottom of our building was blown out.
For me, Ground Zero, Fulton and Broadway, about 2 blocks from the World Trade Center, just as the South Tower crumbled. Hollywood could never imagine something like this. A tidal wave of smoke and debris came roaring down Broadway. I was standing at the corner of Fulton and Broadway. I ran into a building, ran between a column and a building at 195 Broadway, and pushed my face and my body into that building. For what seemed like 5 minutes, I was pelted with all kinds of debris. I crouched down, was coughing, trying to breathe. You couldn't get any air. The air was so full of smoke and dust. When it finally settled, I stood up. My glasses were covered with dust. Hours later, I'm still covered with dust. The building that I was in front of, 195 Broadway, the doors were gated shut. They opened the doors, let us in, and inside we were finally able to breathe. It wasn't easy. My eyes were filled with dust. My mouth was filled with dust. I was choking. The people I was with were choking. It was just absolutely horrific. All I could think of was, this is war.
I just heard the rumble, and then I ran like hell, and there was a large wind coming.
Down here, panic. Survivors flee by whatever means they can, fearing more destruction at any moment. At 10:30, I tried to leave the building, but as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble and more smoke and more dust. I ran inside the buildings, the chandelier shook, and again, black smoke filled the air. Within another 5 minutes, we were covered again with more silt and more dust. And then a fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was a third explosion, this building might not last.
Everyone, please clear the corner.
Palpable fear as people run through the streets, choking on dust and debris.
You gotta chase it. Come on, let's go, let's go.
We saw the building come down. We all ran, and the walkway held up to save like 40 or 50 of us that were right there. We were buried there, and then cops shot out windows in the next building. It was the only thing that was in front of us was like these 1-inch windows.
The streets of the financial district covered with debris, in some cases ankle deep. Cars on fire, cars just turned by the force of the explosions. It was like something no one had ever seen. Panic, like smoke, heads uptown. Officials ordering precautionary evacuations of some of New York City's landmarks.
This is an orderly evacuation of 30 Rockefeller Plaza.
On the street, anxious commuters trying to call.
Can't account for all of our employees. We're just in a state of shock.
The biggest, busiest city in the world, the attack revives fears of the 1993 bombing. Suddenly, nowhere in the financial district seems safe. Did you ever think this could happen again?
No, I really didn't. I lived through the first one.
After a tragedy so great, tonight a city comes together, searching for safety and comfort. Tom, now this area is more than just a business district. It is also where people live. And within the last hour, we have seen families bringing suitcases, crates carrying their family pets,
to leave and to go elsewhere. They have no water, they have no gas, and there is also the fear that more buildings will collapse. The area is covered by police from all over New York City, and they tell us that they will be here through the night. Tom?
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Ann Thompson. But let me ask you, after you finally emerged from that building, what about other people who could not get into a building? What kind of casualties did you see?
Tom, I will tell you that when I walked out of the building on Broadway and headed down towards Canal, it was as if there had been a blizzard of debris and dust all over the street. I saw people running, I was walking, there were a lot of rescue people there, but there were people injured. I saw a woman being carried by two men. It was like something I had never seen anything like it, and all I could think of was just to get away from there, to get to safety. And as I kept walking to Canal Street, I could hear yet another explosion behind me. It was truly one of the most frightening moments I've ever lived through.
Thanks very much, NBC's Ann Thompson. Any number of NBC News personnel were caught in all of that today. Among them, our producer Mary Beth O'Toole and correspondent Rahema Ellis. And they provided us tonight with a kind of a video diary. We'd like to share that with you now. Well, we'll hope to get back to Rahema Ellis. Obviously, we're having some difficulty with what has been going on with the audio part of our broadcast tonight in that particular videotape. This is a live picture looking across New York Harbor, and I'll ask your forbearance and patience here because we are doing the very best we can under, as you might expect, some very trying circumstances. That's looking across from the other side, from the New Jersey side, at the lower end of Manhattan. That is a picture that has been going on all day, but when it began, there were the two 110-story towers of the World Trade Center. They are now gone from the Manhattan skyline. It's still a stunning thought to realize that they have been brought down so coldly and so efficiently in such a cold-blooded fashion by these hijacked airliners in this terrorist attack. Another colleague who captured some of the most horrifying moments today is Christian Martin. He's a native New Yorker, and he's a producer at Dateline. He had his own camera with him when the buildings began to come down.
I saw a tourist with a video camera, so I said, let me buy that from you. I took a shot of a huge wheel of a plane lying in the middle of the avenue. There was all these sort of white sheets in the middle of the street, which took me a minute to figure out what those were. I mean, the collapse happened 10 minutes after I got the camera. I shot a couple of shots of the building burning. I was shooting the building, and the building started to collapse, and that happens pretty slowly. Everyone gets into the job for adventure. This turned sour pretty fast. I was down in Oklahoma City, and I got there about 4 hours afterwards, and that was pretty chaotic. This was about 1,000 times worse and more chaotic than that. And then, the cop was like, run, to save my life. I had literally a mouthful of soot. You couldn't see. It was just... And then people were just remarkable. I mean, everyone was just in a horrible, horrible place. You couldn't see. Everyone was hurt. I was so lucky. So lucky. So much luckier than so many other people. I mean, you just cannot overemphasize how many completely innocent, beautiful people were just, destroyed by this.
One of our producers, Christian Bernard, tonight, in his own words, he was there in the middle of it. Christian Martin is a producer for Dateline. He managed to buy a camera from a tourist and then almost lost his life as he was trying to record what was going on down there. We want to tell you that momentarily we do expect to hear from the Attorney General of the United States, John Ashcroft, who does have supervisory responsibility for the FBI. He's our chief law enforcement.
Crime scenes have been established by the federal authorities in New York, in Washington, D.C. area, in Pittsburgh, in Boston, and in Newark. The full resources of the Department of Justice, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, the U.S. Attorney's offices, the U.S. Marshals Service, the Bureau of Prisons, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the Office of Justice Programs are being deployed to investigate these crimes and to assist survivors and victim families. Thousands of FBI agents in all of the field offices across the country and in the international Legat offices, assisted by personnel from other Department of Justice agencies, are cooperating in this investigation. The FBI has established a website where people can report any information about these crimes. That address is www.ifccfbi.gov. That address again, www.ifccfbi.gov. Individuals can report any information they know about these crimes to that website. It takes courage for individuals to come forward in situations like this, and I urge anyone with information that may be useful and helpful to authorities to use
tonight in the grief that it's been caused. And as the President and everybody in his administration have said, we, the government, will continue to operate and continue to provide the services to all Americans.
Secretary of Health and Human Services Tommy Thompson with John Ashcroft, who is the Attorney General of the United States, talking about the role of the federal government now in tracking down those people who are responsible for today's attacks, and then the process of healing physically and psychologically and politically this country. Big part of the story today, the medical response. Witnesses kept saying the scene today was like a war zone. In fact, one of the rescue workers said, "I spent a year in combat. I never saw anything quite like all of this." New York area has first-rate medical facilities, and many of them, and NBC's Robert Bazell was at one of them today, and he joins us now. Robert?
Tom, within minutes of the first explosion, thousands of doctors and nurses at hundreds of hospitals around the New York City area responded with emergency plans to the biggest medical crisis this city has ever faced. At the scene of the explosions and building collapse, emergency workers set up triage sites to put the dead aside and move the most critically wounded to area hospitals. The closest trauma center to the World Trade Center is St. Vincent's in New York's Greenwich Village. A steady stream of ambulances began minutes after the explosion and continued through the day with many kinds of injuries.
Several fractures, several patients have already been to the operating room, and because of the intense fire and smoke, multiple patients with inhalation injuries, and they're being monitored in critical care units.
Medical staff stood prepared to meet each ambulance, some carrying many injured. This one hospital sent out a call for blood donors, and within minutes, so many volunteers appeared that the hospital was swamped and arranged for buses to take donors to other hospitals.
What if you know you just owe and you're not sure whether you're negative or positive?
More than 400 casualties were taken across the Hudson River to hospitals in New Jersey and Staten Island.
What next? Oh my God.
Among the first casualties, about 1 in 5 were rescue workers, firefighters, police, and EMS technicians involved in the rescue effort. Many of the rescuers, hardened by years of tragedies, said they had never seen anything as bad.
Day turned into night for about 2 or 3 minutes, and took an inventory of myself and went about.
As of late this evening, the total number of casualties taken to all area hospitals stands near 1,000. And that number is very low because rescue workers expect that there are still thousands of people buried underneath all of that rubble. And all of the doctors and nurses expect that they are going to be treating
these attacks to comfort the victims and their families.
to commit our full support to the effort to bring those responsible to justice. We, Republicans and Democrats, House and Senate, stand strongly united behind the President and will work together to ensure that the full resources of the government are brought to bear in these efforts. Our heartfelt thoughts and our fervent prayers are with the injured and the families of those who have been lost.
As a nation, are with those families and those injured and those who are the casualties of today's attack. We also remember those thousands of people who are rescue workers. We ask now that we all bow our heads in a moment of silence and remembrance. Thank you.
Well, I do not know whether that was a spontaneous gesture, but whether it was or was not. To see members of the House and the Senate, men and women, hugging each other in the face of this attack on the country, standing together on the steps of the Capitol on the evening of the 11th day of the month.
Of course, Hillary Clinton. If someone had told me 2 days ago
100 dead and injured, at least at the Pentagon. But there are few places in the air tonight anywhere in the United States. There are few planes in the air anywhere because the FAA has grounded all civilian aircraft until at least noon tomorrow. Nothing is supposed to fly until at least noon tomorrow when the FAA will have some further information. By the way, the stock exchanges will also be closed tomorrow. President Bush will address the nation from Washington tonight. It originally was scheduled for 9 o'clock Eastern Time. We're told that that will be moved up some. Exactly when the president has now decided to speak, we do not know. We expect it at any time, and we will, of course, carry it live here. President Bush has already promised to, quote, find and punish whoever carried out these cowardly attacks. And federal officials say, not all of the intelligence agencies, but some federal officials say they, quote, strongly suspect that renegade Saudi millionaire Osama bin Laden may have been involved, but there's no confirmation of that whatsoever. And if you're concerned about hearing some reports of U.S. missile strikes in Kabul, Afghanistan, didn't happen, according to senior U.S. officials. What happened in Kabul, Afghanistan, the pictures of explosion and fire there, had nothing to do with any U.S. missile attacks. There haven't been any U.S. missile attacks. While at least one news organization reported that missiles had hit Kabul, Afghanistan, it turns out to be not true. CBS News correspondent Scott Pelley is at the site of today's attacks in lower Manhattan tonight. And as night falls, Scott, what's the situation there?
Dan, as you can see, the smoke is still rising on lower Manhattan Island as night falls here. We have spent most of the day with firemen, paramedics, and police officers near the World Trade Center towers. One of the firefighters told us that he didn't see any bodies in the area. He just saw pieces of bodies. Pieces of bodies, he told us, in the street, on the sidewalks. I asked him if he could give us some idea of how many bodies, and he just shook his head sadly and said, far too numerous to have any idea. We have spent a great deal of time with the firefighters. They all describe us.
Pentagon's lowered 2 floors on the southwest side, exploding on impact as horrified commuters watch.
I saw a plane going down, big plane, commercial liner type, going down full speed and just inside the side of the Pentagon.
Panicked employees evacuate by the thousands. The plane slices deep into the lower Pentagon, leaving a gaping black hole of destruction. The upper floors later collapse, burying hopes any more survivors will be found alive. At the opposite end of the Pentagon, well out of harm's way, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld was at his desk.
Secretary Rumsfeld was in his office at the time the plane hit the Pentagon and proceeded down towards the impact point in the building. It actually went outside the building and was helpful in getting several people that were injured onto stretchers.
It was 4 hours before the fire is brought under control and rescuers enter the building in search of more dead or possible injured. In a scene straight out of a war zone, F-16, scrambled by the National Guard, fly cover over the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. But the attacks appear over, the unspeakable deed done. And a short time ago, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Hugh Shelton, expressed America's resolve with a firm pledge to retaliate against those responsible. The #1 suspect, Osama bin Laden. Now, the military has always had contingency plans for attacks against a variety of bin Laden targets.
Go ahead and leave.
Not because of actual threats, but because no one knew what might be next.
There is a war here now.
We are a nation.
Each day because it's so sacred. Additionally, to listen to your kids, hear what issues they have, and give them an opportunity to talk about the feelings that these kinds of events generated in them.
And you deal with it presumably a little bit different depending on the age of the child.
Absolutely. The little kids, we really should minimize TV exposure, gory details, and as we move up the age spectrum to the teenagers, we really just want to listen, give them the opportunity to talk about how they're doing, how their friends are doing, what they think about the world, what things they could do to improve the world.
What kind of mechanisms help people in general to deal with this kind of
Of the youngest generations, for whom this kind of attack had been limited to their history lessons until today.
They hit the Pentagon. It's a slap in the face. It's the nerve center of our military, and they hit the Pentagon? What is that?
I always thought America was like my superhero, like nothing could harm America. I mean, America is everyone's defendant.
This is an attack on our generation. It is an attack on our culture, our system, our values, what we do.
There is a growing sense tonight that what we do now will truly define us as a nation.
I'd hate to see panic.
Who may be
to comfort the families of the passengers.
It's just to be there and to say to them, we are here and we'll do whatever we can do to help you through this trauma and this pain.
The first plane to crash into the World Trade Center, American Airlines Flight 11, was bound from Boston to Los Angeles, piloted by 52-year-old John Oganowski. This afternoon, his brother spoke to reporters.
I ask all of you for your prayers. Or as I refer to him as Brother John. And I ask you to also pray for our whole country today.
Among the well-known passengers on the hijacked planes, the producer of the TV series Frasier, David Angel, and CNN commentator Barbara Olson, wife of U.S. Solicitor General Ted Olson. She reportedly called her husband twice on a mobile phone to tell him her plane was being hijacked, that the crew and all the passengers were being herded to the back of the aircraft. And on United Flight 93 from Washington to San Francisco, one of the flight attendants, C.C. Myers, also used a cell phone to report that hijacking to her husband, a policeman in Fort Myers, Florida. By midday in Los Angeles, FBI personnel were swarming over the airport checking for possible bombs, but none were found. As a precaution, police and the FBI ordered the airport evacuated.
We're evacuating all terminals and we're stopping traffic all over.
An eerie scene at Los Angeles International tonight, the airport completely empty.
And why were all of the hijacked planes California bound? One theory is that the hijackers deliberately chose planes that would have been fully loaded with fuel for a transcontinental flight. Tom?
Thanks very much, NBC's George Lewis tonight. Now let's go to the reaction around the rest of the country. This day of terror rippling from coast to coast. NBC's Jim Avila is at the Sears Tower in downtown Chicago. Jim?
Tom, Chicago's skyline intact but virtually empty tonight as America's skyscrapers were evacuated through most of the day today. That includes Chicago's Sears Tower, the Arco Towers in Los Angeles, the Bank of America in San Francisco, all waiting for the all clear. The nation's landmarks, America's gathering spots, today abandoned as potential terrorist targets, from the Seattle Space Needle and LA City Hall in the west, to Disney World in the southeast, to the world's biggest shopping mall, the Mall of America in Minneapolis, closed. And of course, at the country's tallest building, Sears Tower, and Michigan Avenue in the Midwest, the symbols of American life frozen in fear.
It's scary. Your family's away from home, your kids at school, so it's very scary.
America hunkered down. Chicago's financial district virtually empty. Every sworn police officer in the third largest city ordered to the streets. The nation's workforce turning around and heading home. Larry Hudson works at the Sears Tower.
And I got to the elevator and I said, hey, what am I going up for?
Kelly and David McLean split up to go to work this morning and quickly decided home in front of the television set was the safest spot today.
Now this nation has turned, it's turned upside down. Emotionally, perhaps financially, who knows? It's absolutely, it's one of those moments that you can't believe you actually saw played out.
At America's 5,000 airports, total shutdown.
Ground stop for all airports until 1 o'clock. That means that no airplanes will be leaving any of the airports in the United States.
An estimated 200,000 passengers stranded. At O'Hare, world's busiest, a line of jets held on the runway for hours. No open gates, but surprisingly few complaints.
Being upset about missing my plane, that's trivial compared to people that were on the plane and in the buildings.
Military planes like this one in San Francisco escorting the last of the commercial jetliners safely to the ground. But a crippled air travel system is more than inconvenience. Aviation expert Mike Boyd.
Air transportation is part of our communication system.